if you don't mind, if everyone could please be seated. Before we start today's meeting, I would like to ask that we observe a moment of silence for Chicago firefighter Drew Price, who lost his life today in service to our city. Thank you. We will begin today's meeting with the call of the roll to establish a quorum. Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Driver is present, Commissioner Gomez, Commissioner Loizen, Commissioner Nellis, Commissioner Terry. With 7 members of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability present, we have a quorum and can conduct the commission's business. The next item on our agenda is public comment. If you would like to share something related to the commission's work on public safety, you have a few options. You can speak at a public meeting. You can also submit public comment in writing by emailing your comment to communitycommissionpubliccomment@cityofchicago.org. Or you can bring a copy of your comment to one of our meetings and give it to someone either on the commission or someone on our staff. People who wanted to speak during the public comment period tonight were asked to submit their names in writing earlier. Names were then drawn at random by a member of the commission staff. Speakers will be called in the order in which their names were drawn. If your name is called to offer public comment, we ask that you approach the microphone and line up in the order in which your name is called. When it's your turn to speak, please say your name and then spell your name and then offer your comment. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. We have allotted a total of 20 minutes for this portion. Also, if you are not able to come up to the microphone, please get either our attention or someone on our staff's attention so that we may bring a microphone to you. Our first speaker is David Orlikoff. Actually, where's the mic? Oh, here. Is he virtual? Can somebody confirm if he's virtual?
Yes, hello, David Orlikoff. I am virtual. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Shoot, I hope this works. I'm going to try to read off my phone. I hope the Zoom doesn't crash. I'm speaking today. I'm a 14th District Councilor in Humboldt Park, Logan Square, and we've had Impact for Equity from the Free to Move Coalition speak at our previous meetings, and we've discussed their report on traffic stops at length. Oh, God damn it. Did it break? Shoot. Okay. I'm sorry for swearing. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we passed a resolution at our last meeting for the 14th District Council recommending that CCPSA take up a policy position that Free to Move is recommending to end pretextual traffic stops, which has been a major practice of CPD since 2015, since the consent decree started, and it's not really working, but it is taking a lot of resources, and we're hearing complaints all the time about how long the response time is. You know, the response times are not satisfactory in my district or across the city, whether it's taking 30 or 45 or over an hour even to get to a call. So the priorities are out of place in terms of where CPD is spending their resources, and this is harming communities in multiple ways. On the one hand, it's directly harming the communities of color who are being targeted. In my district, you're 7.8 times more likely to be pulled over if you're driving while Black than white, and 2.4 times more likely to be pulled over if you're driving while Latino than white. And the police that I've talked to, have acknowledged this. They don't dispute sort of the claims in the report. My commander said that she believes that it's, an important part of their strategy to address armed robberies. However, I asked her to clarify if she had any evidence whatsoever to support that, or even a single instance where these pretextual traffic stops had led to, preventing or apprehending anyone involved in armed robberies, and she could not provide a single example. So no evidence from the police that this has worked for any of the issues that are important to the community. Personally, I've been struck by a car, more than once per year, every year since 2020 while riding bikes.
Thank you, David. We've reached the conclusion of the 2 minutes. Thank you for your comment. We got 10. Our next public commenter is Dion McGill. Yeah, well, we're have more than 10 people.
Hey, how you all doing? Deon McGill. I'm a police district counselor in the 7th Police District. So I just really want to comment. I received emails from residents, and I told them that I would address their concerns directly to you, and I will address them directly to our commander, specifically about the Chicago Sun-Times article about the membership of Chicago police officers and groups like the Oath Keepers and such, but more recently, a blog that came out about an officer that has apparently for years been displaying grossly racist behavior. What do I tell a resident of color on the South Side of Chicago that potentially a detective that may be working in their communities uses phrases like chimp out and uses the N word with the hard R and all these different things? I am excited, this idea of connecting community to CPD in a worthwhile, effective, meaningful way to build those bridges and relationships. But when these things happen, especially if it's something that appears to be long-standing, those bridges are burned, right? We're not just like suddenly, oh, we're going to rebuild this relationship. That relationship, if it existed, is now gone. And then lack of clarity in those situations only exacerbates the dissolving of any relationships that exist. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what clarity. I know, like, when you come to investigations, there are certain things you can't say, whatever, but whatever clarity can be put forth to the community to let them know something is being done. This person, we didn't know, but now we know, and we're going to try to fix it. That would be great. Because if they think no one cares and they think no one's noticing and no one's paying attention, then that just makes our jobs immensely harder. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom on virtual, Jason Maddox. The person still on the Zoom?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I'd like to say that I agree wholeheartedly with the proposal to pursue changes to pretextual stops. I think that those are the types of mechanisms and instruments that the commission should be focusing on. I think that we need to look at, in addition to the workforce allocation studies that the commission is looking at, we need to look at a people's violence reduction strategy that could be different from the violence reduction strategy that we've seen put forth by CPD, which relies on pretextual stops. Also, the comments about detectives point to issues in the budget. I think that the commission should be recommending reductions in the Bureau of Detectives and Patrol and Counterterrorism. The vast majority of the $2 billion police budget goes towards patrol, goes towards constitutional policing, basically fixing their mistakes, and goes towards counterterrorism, which militarizes our city and also increases non-evidence-based gang enforcement and gang deterrence activities within CPD. So that's the vast majority of the budget, and all those values and priorities are in contravention to the issues with pretextual stops, which were just noted before. I'll also say that the commission should take a stronger position against the public safety threats of the DNC, of the Democratic Convention. This is a nonpartisan issue. I'll say that again. This is a nonpartisan safety issue that with large events like this, whether it be the Olympics in Atlanta or whether it be other large events, that leads to increases in carceral surveillance, militarization, and increased police presence and enforcement.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. We appreciate your comment. Our next speaker is Alex Perez. Yeah, just in the interest of time, so other folks will be ready. After Alex, it's going to be Lee Bilecki and Elizabeth Rockford.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Perez. I'm a district council from the 2nd District. I would like to draw attention to an investigation into a CPD detective, Papao, who's being investigated for racist and anti-LGBTQ posts on social media. From what I've been able to see, this person may be an Area 1 detective and is operating primarily in the 2nd and 3rd districts, which are primarily Black communities. I do believe in innocent until proven guilty, but I also believe that this is not an isolated incident, regardless of this one detective. I believe this is a deeper problem. So my comment is for Chief Snelling. If these allegations are found to be true, I hope that you move to terminate this officer and any other officers engaging in similar behavior. We cannot be led to believe that someone who shares these racist memes and videos is effectively carrying out their duties without bias. That's it.
Thank you. Lee.
Good evening, Lee Bilecki, 22nd District Police Council. I'm glad tonight's event, subject matter hearing is dealing with officer wellness. It's a subject that I've been involved in as a peer support member for the department's employee assistance program. I've responded to the scene of many of the suicides that have occurred around the city. My friend Ed Doherty's impacted me greatly. It is heartbreaking to the families and the friends of the officers who knew them. We always search for the reasons why. Experts constantly come up with data and statistics, but that doesn't comfort the loved ones. I've responded to officers shot in the line of duty as well. The scene at the hospital of Ella French's murder is one I'll never forget. I was glad to be there to talk to officers and offer help and assistance. I've attended roll calls after these tragedies and spoke to officers in these districts, reminding them of how important they are to the city, their families, and each other. I think back on my own career and the devastation of violence that I've witnessed and how it's affected me over the years. It's something police officers never forget. I can relate almost every holiday with a tragedy. More is being done today on many levels than ever before, with more to be done, because too much is never enough. Thank you, and God bless those police officers who are out there doing their best under difficult conditions. Prayers for the family of the fire department firefighter that lost his life today as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Elizabeth Rochford from the 17th Police District Council. I'm here to ask, as I did in September, that the commission have a goal for the superintendent that has some kind of metric that measures how the district commanders and the district counselors are working together. If we are supposed to improve relations between the community and the police, we need to be having relationships in each of those districts. And just to say that it's going to be left up to each individual district to decide if they want to have relationships with the district counselors or not, I don't think that's acceptable. I think you guys need to set the standard and say that it needs to be measurable, and we need to ensure that each district has relationships between the district counselors and the CPD leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next three speakers are Moises Bernard, followed by Anthony Bryant, followed by Jose Manuel Almanza.
Moises Bernal, Moisesbernal. I could speak many things, but let me see. I got a minute. Okay, here we go. First and foremost, I'm going to speak out in terms of whatever you can do, whatever this commission can do in terms of the migrants that are staying in front of the police stations. it's my opinion, it's a racist travesty, the conditions that they're in. And so there's no reason whatsoever, and no acceptable reason to have them staying there like animals, like filthy animals. And that's this city's, the mayor, Brandon Johnson's responsibility, the city council's responsibility. And it's happening under, you guys have some authority in terms of policy, and use it, because it's a racist travesty. It's unacceptable. Secondly, pretextual stops. Racist police murders of young people, torture, the mass incarceration system. That's ongoing. And whatever powers you have and authority, you must be addressing these issues as well. So this is a racist city. It's got to change.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony David Bryant, ANTHONY DAVID I am one of the police district council members in the 3rd district. I just want to reiterate some of the things my colleagues have said, as well as some of my constituents, and amplify their voices and concerns. So one of the reasons why a lot of us ran for this district council, and a lot of the work that we've been doing these past few months, has been around addressing our predominantly Black and brown districts' concerns around with racist police officers who may exhibit behaviors or words that were used from a detective in Area 1. I also want to, I thought someone was speaking. I also just really want to champion their work, that they want police officers who look like them, who understand their communities, who come from their communities, to help ensure their safety. With that, we must introduce policies and initiatives that address a lot of the biased behaviors that our police officers are supposed to not exhibit to ensure our community safety. I also want to say that our communities just deserve better. I think it's very harsh to know someone has been making racist comments since when I was in high school, and that they are supposed to close cases to what of crimes that's been done in these areas. So I won't ramble on too much, but I hope tonight, with the vote that you all will have on the policy, would help amplify the work that we're looking to do.
Thank you.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Jose Manuel Almanza, he, him. I'm the Director of Advocacy at Equiticity. And I wanted to talk about pretextual stops today. Early today, the City Council Committee on Transportation and Pedestrian Safety and Traffic Safety held a hearing on traffic stops, and the Free to Move Coalition presented. And one thing I want to highlight is the #1 way that people interact with police is through a traffic stop. And through the Free to Move Coalition's work, we found out that last year, the Chicago Police Department did 600,000 traffic stops. Out of those 600,000 traffic stops, over 90% of the time, they didn't find a gun. They didn't find any guns. They didn't find any contraband. They didn't issue a ticket. They didn't find someone with an arrest warrant, and they didn't arrest anyone. So what they're doing is they're just harassing Black and brown drivers throughout the city, doing over 600,000 traffic stops for minor things like a broken taillight, tinted windows, expired license plate, missing no city sticker, administrative things that have nothing to do with keeping our roadways safe or fighting crime or finding contraband. So I would like to ask if the commission can look into this further and prioritize this when you're thinking about policy for the next year. And I would also like to invite you all or invite ourselves to the commission to be able to present on traffic stops. So the commission can make a better informed decision and really improve public safety and the way that Black and brown people move around the city. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Jay Jackson.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Jay Jackson. If I was at work, I'd be introducing myself as ASA Jay Jackson. Oh, I'll step a little bit closer. I said, how's it going, everybody? My name is Jay Jackson. If I was on the clock, I'd be introducing myself as ASA Jay Jackson. I am someone that is from the South Side. I live on 74th in Wabash, and I work in the restorative justice community courts here in North Lawndale, as well as here in Inglewood. And I also was at the city council meeting this morning, and I just wanted to provide just a different perspective on the idea of pretextual stops and the way that they they interfere with the ability to build rapport and relationships between the Chicago citizens as well as police officers. It's been said enough and can't be overstated more that the current condition of traffic stops are essentially just a replacement for Terry stops, which have been deemed very racist in many instances. And it seems as though, for the most part, police officers, as it was stated, most citizens' only interactions with the police are through traffic stops. It seems as though there is a widespread sledgehammer method of guessing and checking by pulling over as many people as possible and hoping. There's been times where I've actually sat outside of the community court, sitting on 69th Street, and watched the same squad car speed back and forth, stopping people, and in 1 hour stopping 8 different individuals, not issuing a single ticket. And that's the only interaction that many people have with the police. So I would just like to say that as it's already been stated, I believe that if you want to build rapport with the community, the focus should be making sure that those stops are not the only times in which somebody can trust that their police officer will show up. As someone that's even been a victim of crimes, I've had my house and my garage robbed and waited 3 days for a police officer to come out and see it, but I also get pulled over every month, and I know for a fact that I don't do anything illegal with my driving. So that's just, again, one more level of, perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. The next order of business is approval of the minutes. Sorry, we've reached the end of our public comment period. Thank you again to all of our speakers. We value your input. The public comment period's over. The next order of business is approval of the minutes. Before today's meeting, sir, the public comment period is closed. It's over. You can give him the mic.
Person who, I'm the victim here. I spoke with detectives. I even spoke with this retiree. Right. No, you were the
Sir,
gentleman I spoke with.
I don't know your name, but if you can keep your comments to 2 minutes so we can hear you out.
Okay.
The period is closed,
So,
but
that's
I'm
understandable.
allowing you to
So
speak your piece.
pretextual stops, I suppose, are stops where cops supposedly suspect something is happening in the car. In 2020, I was pretextually stopped in my community at Rogers Park by 2 officers, Officer Scott and another Officer Netta. I was attacked. I have emailed you all about this incident, that this committee is supposed to hold these individuals accountable. Right now, I have a lawsuit that they're trying to kick off the table because I can't, look, I'm an indigent individual who has also been through so much. But here it is, as a citizen of this city of Chicago, I suppose that the police should be protecting and serving me also, despite my history, despite my past. But here it is, I found myself shot. And those same people who we employ through our taxpayers' dollars, those same individuals not only allowed those people to leave, they escorted them away. They told me that, no, their investigation was not to investigate the crime, but to investigate my involvement and what wrong I had, but not to the victim. They were investigating the victim, not the perps. And now imagine what type of policing that is. But we suffering every day under the weight of individuals who we, out of our pockets through taxpayer dollars, employ. We stuck under a system, wedged under a system that totally says, no, no need. Or in any other case, will make any excuse they can to not serve you. Any excuse they can to make you the criminal. And I'm wondering why. Since 2020, I have not gotten any justice through deplorable and incompetent police, and my mother now is dead. I was locked up for a domestic. It's so many different instances so and trust me, I've went through the red tape of the attorney general, inspector general, went through that red tape to no avail, went through COPA to no avail, went through this red tape to no avail. So when do we start being heard, honestly heard? Like you said, it's deplorable, disgusting. But we just come up into these meetings and we speak nicely and use all these little words and whatnot to what avail? Why have we now erected this new committee versus COPA, which hasn't done anything in the past? We have a new commissioner coming in.
That's the time. We appreciate you. And if you would like to talk after this, I'll be happy to talk to you. The next order of business is the approval of minutes. Before today's meeting, draft minutes of the commission meeting was held on the commission meetings held on September 28th, October 15th, and October 26th were shared with all commissioners. Are there any corrections to the draft minutes that have been circulated? If there are no corrections, I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I have moved and it's been seconded by Commissioner Gomez that the commission meeting minutes from September 28th, October 15th, and October 26th be approved. Is there any debate on this motion? Hearing none, we move to a vote. Those in favor of adopting a motion to approve these minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it and the motion carries. Now we will discuss new business. I would like to ask Commissioner Troncoso to give us an update on the police board.
Thank you, Commissioner Driver. So this is going to be a short update. Essentially, we are currently accepting applications for the Chicago Police Board, the office that decides disciplinary charges when they're brought against police officers. We are specifically this time looking for lawyers that have 10 years of practicing experience. So the 2 vacancies that are currently up by law are required to be filled by lawyers with 10+ years of experience who have served their community. There's a graphic behind me with more details. It is a part-time paid position. You can also feel free to reach out to me directly if you want more information, and I can give anybody my card afterwards, but we'll be conducting interviews on a rolling basis. And so just want to underscore that in general, it is not required that you are a lawyer to be on the police board, but for these 2 specific vacancies that we're looking for this time around, it is required for those 2.
Thank you, Commissioner Troncoso. I'd just like to add that if you are not a person who wants to apply, you can please help us spread the word. Our commission is committed to making sure that the police board and every other entity that we have oversight over is representative of the city of Chicago. And that means folks like you all helping us spread the word. Are there any questions about this update from any other commissioners or comments? Next, we will have an update on the Public Safety Inspector General investigation that we voted in favor of at our last meeting. For that, I'll pass it to Commissioner Loizen.
Thank you. On November 2nd, 2023, the commission sent a letter to the Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety recommending that the Deputy Inspector General conduct an audit of CPD's process for disciplining officers associated with extremist groups. On November 8th, 2023, the Deputy Inspector General responded to the commission's recommendation. Here is an excerpt from that letter, and I'm quoting this directly from the letter. OIG is continuing to examine the issue of CPD members who associate with extremist or bias-based organizations, including the topics identified in CCPSA's recommendation on multiple fronts. Initially, OIG has a forthcoming inquiry that will address some of the topics described in CCPSA's recommendation. Additionally, OIG will continue to review individual closed disciplinary investigations and make recommendations to inform future investigations. Further, we screen all closed investigations to which we have access, and we select certain investigations for in-depth reviews. That's the end of the excerpt. If you would like to read the entire letter, it is available on our website.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners about this particular item? Hearing none, we'll move on now to new business, which the first item is prohibitions on associations with criminal organizations, or General Order 8-03. The CCPSA ordinance establishes that any new or amended policy shall become effective only after commission approval by a majority vote. This authority applies to general orders. Commissioner Terry is going to provide an update to our work on amending CPD policy GO 8-83, titled Prohibitions on Associations with Criminal Organizations, before it's put to commission for a vote. Commissioner Terry.
Thank you, President Driver, and good evening, everyone. So for the past 10 months, we've been working with Chicago Police Department representatives to amend the policy to include prohibiting officers from participating with organizations that discriminate against certain people and groups, like hate groups or considered terrorist organizations. Over the past 60 days, we have engaged with the community on the updated policy to gain input, and this has included posting the policy on the CCPSA website to solicit feedback, sending out surveys to community stakeholders, outreach to district council members, educating the community at monthly commission meetings, because you all may recall a hearing of sorts that Commissioner Loizon and I did a little while back and took a lot of questions from our fellow commissioners. We've also done an informational webinar where we had close to about 100 people that attended. And we also held a listening session with multiple affinity groups. So during our outreach, several themes were identified by the community, and they are whether the term bias was appropriate and specific enough, should the order directly reference white supremacy and or racism, is the policy specific enough to ensure officers can still engage in organizations working to end discrimination and promote racial and gender-based equity. Also, policy should include monitoring and accountability measures and direction on how the Chicago Police Department will publicize and share a list of prohibited organizations. And lastly, making sure the policy sufficiently protects First Amendment rights. So there should be a slide projecting behind me, just to give you an idea of the general order. And we have appreciated all of the thoughtful community input greatly, and we look to continue the process that we did for this particular policy, for any policy that is before the commission. The community let us know that amending this policy should be a top priority for the commission. As some of you may recall, it has not been amended since 1997. Given the seriousness and urgency of this issue, we feel it's important we vote on this policy today. We will continue our work to ensure that the Chicago Police Department effectively implements this policy, monitors the implementation, and provides regular reporting on the outcome. So that is the end of the report that I have in terms of updates.
There's one additional point of information that Commissioner Terry and I felt was very important to emphasize today to all of you here. And I've just been told a second ago that we have about 70 people on Zoom as well. We just want to make sure that everyone is clear that the general order that we are voting on today is a general order. It is akin to when the legislature passes a new law or the city ordinance or the city council passes a new ordinance. In our authority as commissioners, we do have the ability to pass general orders. We have the ability to work with CPD in modifying general orders, which we believe we did very successfully here. We want to make it clear that we do not have the authority to investigate police officers. We do not have the authority to discipline police officers. What we have passed, what we are hoping to pass in a minute with the vote, is a general order that, again, is no different than any law that is on the books in the state of Illinois. When the legislature passes the law, they don't then involve themselves in the enforcement of the law, the investigation of the law, or the punishment that comes pursuant to the law. So we wanted to make sure that we were being very clear and transparent with everyone here about what the limitations of our authority are and what our role is with respect to voting on this general order right now.
I'd also just like to take a point of privilege to say that and also own it with respect to Commissioner Terry and Loizen, who are the point people on this, that we received some very valuable feedback from some different community groups. And it was something that we looked at, we think is very important. There are things in it that we like, some things we may not like as much, but wanted to just say that the timeline for this, originally we were going to vote on this in October. We wanted, I believe you all wanted more time for community feedback. We hosted a few more listening sessions and wanted to take our time to make sure that we got it right, which pushed us to the November meeting. The feedback that we got, the way our ordinance works, if we were to implement those changes, that would be a substantive and major change to that version of it, which would then restart the clock. CPD was also, I would add to their credit, they were also very open to some changes as well, but that would then restart our clock and push us back a potentially 60 to 90 days. So we felt it important to go ahead, and I felt it important that we go ahead and vote on this at this meeting. And I really pushed for it, and Commissioner Loizen and Terry were in agreement here, but just wanted to state for the record that that was the reason why. It was the reason you don't see a lot of the feedback reflected is not necessarily because we didn't value it or want it there. We also have the ability to amend policies and general orders, but every time we make a substantive change and when things come in that are a little bit late, it restarts our entire clock. So I wanted to make sure that we vote on that today, get it on the books, and then we can figure out the best way forward as far as looking at this again. Also, just to be clear, when we vote on a general order, it then goes into a 60-day waiting period. During that period, the department can make comment and suggest changes. Also, it's for the mayor, who has ultimate veto authority, to take his time to look at the policy to see if he wants to make changes or if he would like to veto that specific policy. So these things, every time we make a change, it sets us back about 90 days. And we've been working on this since January. So I wanted to state for the record why that feedback isn't reflected in this general order. We haven't had those conversations. With that, are there any questions or comments from any other commissioners on this specific policy? General order, sorry, not policy. Seeing no questions, I move to adopt the proposed amendment to Chicago Police Department Directive G08-03. All those in favor, I need that to be seconded. Seconded by Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Gomez. All those in favor of the adoption of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment passes. It's adopted. Next, we will have our subject matter hearing. Thank you, Charlie. Great slow clap. Next, we will have our subject matter hearing on. Next, we will have our subject matter hearing on officer wellness. Before I turn it over to Commissioner Loizen, who will talk more about the subject in our panel, I wanted to provide a brief remarks. And so originally we were going to have a presentation and I was going to have prepared remarks, but I felt it more important just to speak to you all about how we got to this point and my point of view and how this became such a priority for our commission. Maybe a few of us who are commissioners now came into this commission knowing that this was a serious issue, but it wasn't something that was on our radar. It wasn't something that was on my radar. One of the things when my fellow commissioners elected me president, I wanted to always make sure that I approach this type of work with a very open mind and always want to do right by my community. And it was through building relationships with different police officers. It was through having a chance to go and do a ride along, from actually getting to know folks that this issue started to rise to the top. I can remember very vividly during our ride along, I don't want to use the officer's name, but the experience that I had, and how in just a span of 6 to 8 hours, this is a person who at one point took a gun off the street, at another point got swung on by a person who was having a mental health crisis, and he actually didn't respond in an aggressive manner because he knew the person. And just one night, I literally went home and called my dad. I called my pops, and I'm like, man, he got to do that again tomorrow. Like I've had enough action for a year. I'm done. Like I don't want to do another ride along. I don't want to do this anymore. Like that was, we pulled up to a scene where a person was having a mental health crisis, and the ambulance and the first responders were there, and they wouldn't go in. And the officer jumped out of the car and is about to run into this building in my district, on my beat, where a person is barricaded in their room, and their fiance is calling the police because they have a handgun pointed at themselves. And when the officer got to the scene and started to rush out the car, I almost wanted to grab him, like, wait, you don't want to think about this first? Like, that if you might need to chill. But before I could even think, they went in there and diffused the situation. This isn't me trying to say that this is an everyday experience or that I know a lot, but it is me saying how shook I was after that first experience. I also had my own experience, as many folks know, being robbed at gunpoint. And knowing that the amount of therapy and trauma that I've had to deal with since January, I couldn't imagine having to do that every day. And then building relationships with officers and them sharing stories of how the canceled days off affected them. How they would say, of course, we want more clinicians, but what we really want is a safe and adequate work environment. What we really want is a city that also cares about us and treats us as members of the community. What we really want, and the best version of mental health, is time with our families, is the chance to spend the holidays with our families. And it was at that point that I realized that although I come through this work and approach this work from an accountability lens, I approach this work as a young Black male who grew up right down the street in Inglewood, as a person who has been harassed by the police, as a person who's had very negative experiences. And literally through building these relationships, it touched me in a way that I knew that this had to be a priority for our commission. And I'm not trying to speak for everybody here on this panel, but it's changed me in a way that I no longer view police officers as members who are people who are not members of my community. They are members of our community. We have a residency requirement here. And so when we say Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, we mean them too. And so it's just something that we take very seriously. I also want to commend Commissioner Loizen, because she has stretched me and pushed me in ways that I never thought imaginable. The first time I had an experience like this was sitting in her living room, where she said to me, like, you're smart, you're good at this, but like, you have a blind spot. And she sat with me and she introduced me to her friends that were officers and told me what they were going through, and they were vulnerable. And I was able to share my experience. So I say all that to say, if we want healthy and strong and safe and constitutional policing in our city, we have to make sure that we're not sending sick people into our communities. And the way that we do that is by making sure that they're taken care of on the front end. The last thing I'll bring up is the working conditions. That's not something that was on my radar. We hear about the police department budget. We hear it's $2 billion, and we know it's a ton of money. When you go into the stations, that's not reflected in the stations. I literally can't imagine how some folks have some of the worst days of their lives and then go back into a work environment where there's no ceiling tiles, where everything is dirty, where there are bugs, where locker rooms are molded, where you can't put your coat in a locker, your uniform in a locker because it's flooded. And so that is the lens through which I now approach this work. And I would just encourage you all to be as open-minded as possible, and also support folks. The same way we as community members, we as commissioners we are all Chicagoans and we're all trying to strive for the same thing and also need that support. So I appreciate you all allowing me to share that experience. And I will now pass it to Commissioner Loyson.
To echo Anthony's sentiments about working conditions, I went to the 11th district last week and I have sounded like this ever since. We are going to kick off our officer wellness presentation with a guest that has been very gracious in deciding to join us today. His name is Sergeant Deferville. If I told you the ways in which we tracked down Sergeant Deferville, you would think that we were the CIA, opposed to the Community Commission. Sergeant, will you come up to the podium? Sergeant Deferville has been a Chicago police officer for over 20 years. He brings a unique perspective of what rank and file officers are experiencing every day on the job. And on a personal note, I just want to say that Anthony and I went to visit some districts last week. As I said, we went to the 11th district. I caught this. But when we were there, what we heard from multiple people was that Sergeant Deferville was a person in that district who had really made a difference for police officers and was a really committed police officer, not only to his colleagues, but to the community. And multiple people told us, you have to talk to this guy. So we are very happy to have you here tonight. Thank you for coming. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Commissioners, thank you so much for having me here tonight. Superintendent Snelling, Alderman O'Shea, and our community members and advocates of the community. Thank you for coming out. So I'm going to start off by talking about mental health and how integral it is as a component in our job. I'm a human being, okay? And I'm a human being that believes in preservation of all life and sanctity of all life, okay? The 11th district is the busiest district in the entire city, arguably the entire nation, when it comes down for calls for service, violent crime, your forcible felonies, your Part 1 offenses, okay? These are all your substantive crimes that have extreme impact on our citizens, of course, but our officers also as well. When you study for a promotional exam in the Chicago Police Department, they break it down with frequency and criticality. How frequent does the call happen? How critical does it happen? As you would assume, the lower criticality jobs don't have the higher frequency in most districts. They only happen every so often. In the 11th district, the frequency and the criticality are extremely high. What the officers see in a daily district and a daily tour of duty is most than most people will see in a lifetime. And this is just one shift, okay? We're going to start you off with a brief synopsis of what it's like to work in the 11th district with these high frequency and criticality calls. You start your day off, our parking lot's been condemned for over a year now. It's not structurally sound. We park about a block and a half away. We traverse down the side street where a police parking lot is also part of an alley. The parking lot is not configured correctly. There's a pothole in it about the size of this entire section that can swallow up a whole squad car. Our vehicles are being damaged every single day because you can't manipulate your vehicle in the parking lot. You traverse through feces that are left behind from community members and from some of the people that are in front from all the migrant tents that we have because they don't have facilities. Again, I have preservation of life values. I have sanctity of human life values. I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it. I try to do what I can to help out those community members every day, but this is just traversing into my workplace. When you get in the building, you're immediately greeted by all the ceiling tiles down that have been leaking for several years. I've been a sergeant there for 7 years now. Nothing has been fixed. The bathroom has caught on fire 3 times since I've been there. We had 1 major roof fire. The city plumbers come in. They do what they can just to correct the problem, putting a Band-Aid on an arterial bleed. For those of you know, hemorrhaging out water or anything, it's not going to be fixed with a Band-Aid or a roll of duct tape in this case. There's been several things that have been neglected. Now, what does this all relate to when it comes down for us? We go out and we do the best we can. As a supervisor on the second watch, I try to ensure that my officers are taken care of to do the job that they need to do, okay? Police wellness and mental health wellness is an integral part of policing across the board. We can't do our job effectively. We can't go to those hundreds of disturbances with clients and with people that are suffering from mental illness. We can't go to all those shootings. We can't go to all those crime scenes. We can't do everything that everyone's expected to do, that we're expected to do for everyone. Go back to a station where the pipes are leaking literal feces from the ceiling. This is not made up. This is all documented. I'm documenting this for years now, okay? Our roll call room floods several times a month, okay? We have no answers. We've asked, we've written emails, we've brought this up to several people. We don't know what our next step is going to be to ensure that we get this, because your station is supposed to be someplace where we go to kind of relax and take your mind off of something, or be able to write a good comprehensive police report that is so integral when it goes to court and for the further process down the line. It is so integral to make sure that our officers are able to work with a clear mind to provide better service to all of us and all the community members in the city of Chicago. And I just hope going forward that we could make sure that we address the officer wellness issues from our station, because actions do speak louder than words. And that station effect, what I've done to try and make our station a better place personally myself, by bringing little things in to try and make it more of an environment nourishing for our mental health, it helps. A coat of paint goes a long way. We don't even have that. So I thank you all for your consideration in this, and thank you so much for allowing me to come speak in front of you. It's a true pleasure, and thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. What's that, sir? Well, you're right. I don't know. I've asked several times who even owns the building. They say the Chicago Police Department doesn't own the building. Then they say that asset and information own the building, and then they go back and forth like this. I don't even know who runs it. I've inquired, but we don't know, and we get no answers.
Thank you, Sergeant Deferville. We really appreciate it. That's why we're here. In the interest of time, we're going to move on because we have a lot of really important conversations to have tonight. Before I invite our next speaker up to the podium, I do want to give some background as to what the process has been getting us to this evening. Tonight's discussion on officer wellness is something that we have been working on for nearly a year. When we initially started this process, myself and Commissioner Gomez decided that we wanted to learn more about officer wellness related issues, and many of the other commissioners supported that endeavor. With the help of our staff, we interviewed many different subject matter experts on this issue. We spoke to several of the police unions. We went to meetings. Commissioner Driver and Commissioner Thierry spent some time at the FOP hearing directly from officers. Myself and Commissioner Thierry spent time at the Sergeants Union meeting, hearing directly from sergeants. We spoke to the Lieutenants Union. We spoke to the Captains Union. We also did group listening sessions at a few police districts where officers were able to come in and talk to us about their wellness related concerns. And we really tried to make the rounds to ensure that we understood this issue as well as possible. Tonight, we are going to have another speaker, and then we are going to have a panel discussion. I want to be clear to everybody in this room that we recognize that the issues that we're going to be addressing tonight are extremely difficult and weighty issues. We also recognize that there is a lot of pain from people who feel as though they have been mistreated by the police. And there's an equal amount of pain from police officers who feel like they are struggling to do their jobs every day without a lot of support. In the course of our conversation with subject matter experts, Commissioner Gomez and I both agreed that we had what we call our mind-blowing moment when we had to excuse me, we had the opportunity to talk to Alexa James, who you guys are all going to hear from tonight. And Alexa works in mental health. And one of the things that she told us that was a frustration for her in her job, and something that she wished that she could convey to people to understand, is that the community feels like they are traumatized, and that No one understands their trauma. And police officers believe that they've been traumatized and nobody understands their trauma. And that when people have real dialogue and real conversations and listen, like my dear friend, Commissioner Driver, who opened his mind to this issue, when that happens, what we find out across the board is that community and police officers have a lot more in common than they don't. And that is a point that I really want to ground us this evening in our conversation, because it was our enlightening brainstorm moment. And we thank Alexa for giving it to us. In addition, we also want to talk about the fact that we believe that we have been here on this commission for over a year, and we have identified a bunch of different ways in which we believe the Chicago Police Department can improve. Month to month, everyone who comes to our meetings hears us talk about that. But we also believe that in order to make all of the improvements that we have discussed month after month, we can't do that until we invest in our police officers and their wellness. Well, police officers are going to do a better job at being good constitutional police officers. They're going to do a better job at community policing. They're going to do a better job at quicker response times. They're going to do a better job of treating people in the communities they serve with respect. And so that is the reason why we are really focused on this tonight, because we believe that supporting the notion of wellness being part of the culture of the Chicago Police Department and part of the culture of our city is a giant step towards giving the community members that are here and the community members that aren't here the Chicago Police Department that they want and deserve. We are going to call our next speaker up, and before we do, I want to be clear to everyone that the issues that Ms. Erin Ross is going to be talking about this evening are extremely sensitive, and they are going to be difficult to hear. Erin Ross is a resident of the city of Chicago. She's executive director of the 95th Street Business Association. She resides on the South Side with her husband and her children. She has been proud to be part of a police family her whole life. Her grandfather, father, and brother all served the city of Chicago as Chicago police officers. After losing her brother to suicide 10 years ago, Erin began doing advocacy work for the mental health of first responders. This past May, Erin lost her father, who was a retired police officer, to suicide as well. This has only furthered her passion for trying to help Chicago's first responders. In addition, I want to let everyone know that Erin lives in my neighborhood. She is a friend of mine. And what she is going to speak to you about tonight is an absolutely incredible act of bravery on her part. So we ask all of you to please give her your attention. And Erin, could you come up to the podium now? Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight. I'm here to share my story with you, hoping that it will provide a little insight into the mental health struggles our Chicago police officers face in the course of their job. If you have paid any attention to this issue, you know that the city of Chicago has one of the highest police suicide rates in the country. I think we can all agree that that is something we are not comfortable with. I am also here tonight to ask the CCPSA, community members, CPD, the mayor's office, and all other stakeholders in the city to make a commitment to work on this issue together. We must find a way to balance the goal of keeping our city safe and making sure all residents feel supported by the police while also supporting the well-being of our officers. My story begins in the year 2000 when my father-in-law, Mike Ross, a successful insurance agent and father of 6, took his life at the age of 60. To say we were shocked would be an understatement. Mike was a fun-loving and hardworking man who loved life. It's hard for me to recall a time that I didn't see him with a smile on his face or hear his laughter as I approached him. 2 of the first phone calls I made after Mike died were to my dad and to my brother. Both expressed utter shock and shared my disbelief. They both commented on how many friends Mike had and wondered how he could have sunk to such despair. I share Mike's story with you because it helps you understand how foreign the idea of suicide was to me and to my family. Fast forward a few years later, my brother Ryan had been living in San Francisco, working and enjoying his 20s in a great city. However, something was missing, and he decided to sit for the Chicago police exam. To be honest, this didn't thrill my father, a Chicago police officer who had followed in his father's steps to join the force many years before. My dad never shared many stories of his policing days with us, but we knew he faced many devastating things during his time on the force. In his early days, he worked traffic detail, and he was responsible for going to see families to break the news that a loved one had died. He found this work to be gut-wrenching and eventually requested a transfer. Nevertheless, once we learned that Ryan was accepted into the police academy, my dad beamed with pride. Our entire extended family attended Ryan's graduation from the academy, and we were so proud to have another Healy on the force. Ryan wore the same badge number as my grandfather and my dad had, number 9059. Ryan was placed in the 10th district. He and his partner, Ben Sanchez, were overwhelmed by some of the things they saw. Like my dad, Ryan didn't share many specific details with us. The 2 young partners were involved in a serious car accident while working one night. Ryan suffered significant injuries to his hand and was placed on medical leave for some time. He was concerned that he might not be able to return to the force because he wouldn't have the hand strength needed to fire his weapon. But with physical therapy and time, he regained the mobility in his hand and returned to the force. Ryan purchased a home back in Beverly, the neighborhood where we grew up, and he was so proud. He had only been in his home for a short time when he decided to throw a Super Bowl party for his friends. He was excited for them to see the house and to spend time with them, many of whom he had known since childhood. A few days after that party, Ryan called me and told me that he wasn't feeling like himself. He couldn't name anything specifically, just that he felt off. We talked for a while and I asked him if he wanted me to pick something up for dinner and come over, but he insisted that wasn't necessary. My husband, John, was a practicing family physician at the time and did a lot of work with mental health. Ryan and I agreed that he would talk to John later that night and develop a plan of action. I've replayed that conversation in my head thousands of times, but I hung up believing that Ryan was okay and that we had a plan to make sure he was supported. A few hours later, I received a text from Ryan that sounded ominous and my stomach sank. I immediately called 911 because I knew Ryan had his gun in the house and I was terrified that he would use it. I called my dad next and told him not to say anything to my mom because I didn't want to scare her, but I explained that I had received a frightening text and that we needed to get to Ryan's immediately. Ryan lived only 10 minutes away from us, but it was still too far to save him. I called my babysitter who lived next door, and she ran over to stay with my kids. I was able to head to Ryan's just a few minutes after my dad, but I pulled up to find police cars all over 99th Street where Ryan lived, and my dad doubled over sobbing on the lawn. Obviously, I knew that our worst fear and something that we never could have imagined was our new reality. Ryan was dead at the age of 38. That night was a rainy, icy night in February. The police escorted my dad and I into the back of an ambulance, where they asked us several questions, examined the text on my phone, and canvassed Ryan's home. When we finished answering all the questions, they asked us to wait in our car until they were finished with their investigation inside. I vividly remember my dad reaching over and putting his seatbelt on, even though we were nowhere near ready to drive away. In my head, it made me feel like somehow that safety measure meant we were going to be okay. It was so typical of my dad's cautious nature. We finally returned to my parents' house, escorted by the police. My mom was waiting for us and asked if Ryan was in the hospital. We had to tell her that he had taken his life and was gone. The rest of the night was a blur of bodies pouring into my parents' house. I can still picture Ben arriving at the house and collapsing in tears in my parents' hallway. Ryan and Ben had gone through the academy together and then were assigned to be partners. Theirs was a deep bond, and Ben's grief was tremendous. The next morning, John and I sat our 4 kids down to explain that their uncle, who they loved more than anything, had died at his own hands. They were so young at the time, and I remember thinking that we were ruining their lives. The devastation was overwhelming. Somehow we planned Ryan's funeral, relying heavily on the support of our friends and family. The worst part about suicide is you don't have a why. All you want is an answer, but the answers are elusive. I met Ben for lunch shortly after everything happened, hoping that he might be able to shed some light on it for us. But Ben was as shocked and stunned as we were. Here was a young man working in a career he was proud of, with a new home in his possession and a bright future. Yet something extinguished the light. We walked around in a fog for months. Unfortunately, though, life doesn't stop and things have to be taken care of. My dad spent weeks single-handedly cleaning out Ryan's home because the rest of us couldn't bring ourselves to return to it. For a long time, I couldn't even drive down 99th Street. My dad saved anything he thought that we would want and picked special clothing items for my kids, Ryan's only nieces and nephews, to choose from as a remembrance of him. My dad showed tremendous grace while sorting through the artifacts of his only son's life. My dad also worked with some police officers from the police academy to film a piece explaining the devastation of suicide and imploring officers to not be afraid to ask for help. If you knew my dad, you know what a big ask this was for him. He was a quiet person and not one to speak about emotions, but he agreed to do it because he said if it saved even one family from experiencing the devastation we faced, then it would be worth it. My dad turned 80 in December and was adjusting to life as a fully retired person. He was an avid bike rider and went for 2 walks each day. His bike route included a daily stop at the cemetery to check on my brother's grave. He had worked for Marquette Bank for years following his retirement from CPD after spending 27 years on the force, and it had been something he really enjoyed. He oversaw their security force and later investigated white-collar crime. We never could have suspected that my dad was also struggling, but on May 10th, my dad used his gun to shoot himself in the basement of our family home. My mom was at morning mass and returned home to find a short note on the kitchen table. Once again, we were left without a why, just a brief note apologizing for his decision and telling her not to go in the basement alone. She called me immediately and I raced to the house. It was like deja vu with police squads lining the street. It is puzzling for us because my dad knew the pain that Ryan's suicide caused our family. I remember one time when we were talking about suicide, my dad had said that a lot of Healy men died at relatively early ages, but never by suicide. It just indicates to me how truly troubled my dad's mind must have been to make the decision to take his life. Someone compared the act of suicide to that of a heart attack of the brain. That resonates with me because it must be such a snap decision and seems like the only way out of a pain that we can only imagine. It's so hard for our rational brains to try and understand because it is beyond understanding. The pain that my dad had carried for so many years from things he had seen during his police work, combined with losing friends as he got older and missing Ryan every day for over 10 years, must have overtaken him and caused a despair beyond our imagination. Again, you see me trying to find a why, but we simply don't know. In a similar way, the Chicago Police Department is trying to find the why. Why do so many more of our officers end their lives when compared to first responders in other cities? The answer is that we do not know, but we do know that there are measures we can take to better support the mental well-being of our officers. This is where our city leadership comes into play. Unfortunately, my story is only one of so many more. I'm here to represent all of us and to implore you to keep strategizing and keep a commitment that we can do better, we must do better. My dad and my brother loved life. They loved their friends and family, and they loved the city of Chicago and did their best to serve it well. They put their lives on the line each time they left home, wearing their uniform with care and pride. I think they would be proud that their story might be a springboard for discussions on support for our first responders. Former President Barack Obama recently gave a speech to youth leaders in Chicago. He told them, "We're here because we believe that humanity can bridge our differences and help us make better choices, that we can see each other and listen to each other and imagine each other's hardships and pain." I hope that our efforts to stem police suicide in the city of Chicago can work to the same end. We simply must do better for our men and women in blue. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Erin. I know that that was difficult and we really appreciate you sharing it with us. At this time, I would like to invite our panel members up. You all know who you are, so please come to your seat. And in addition, I want to remind everyone in the audience that there is a team that is collecting questions while the panel discussion is going on. We will receive those questions and try to categorize them. We may not be able to answer every question that is asked this evening, but we will read them all and we will look forward to continuing this discussion with all of you.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining us on stage. I'm going to briefly introduce the panelists that we have here joining us. I also want to thank our speaker, Erin. That was incredibly moving and incredibly courageous. On behalf of the citizens of Chicago, we want to thank you for being able to speak in such a brave and powerful manner. Joining us for the discussion that I'll be moderating are a group of incredible folks that have studied and thought about this issue of officer wellness throughout their entire careers. Directly to my right is not so new Superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, Chief Larry Snelling.
Good evening.
He's made wellness a top priority for his administration, and we're happy to see him here making up to that promise. To the right of him Yes, I'll speak up. Can everyone hear me better? All right, better. To the right of Mr. Snelling is Miss Sandy Jo MacArthur. She has had a long career in policing that spanned over 43 years. She attained the rank of assistant chief before her retirement in 2015 from the Los Angeles Police Department. She is currently a consultant with law enforcement agencies across the nation, including on several projects that pertain to community engagement, violence reduction, police training reform, police early intervention systems, as well as the issue being discussed today, officer wellness. And then to the right of Ms. MacArthur is Alexa James. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Alliance on Mental Health, or NAMI, here in Chicago. She's a leading voice in the conversation around mental wellness. She has represented NAMI Chicago to the Chicago Police Accountability Task Force under multiple mayors and has done incredible work in furthering the work of mental health for our officers. And last but not least is Alderman Matt O'Shea. He is currently serving his third term as Alderman of Chicago's 19th Ward, and he's been a leading advocate when it comes to wellness issues for first responders throughout the city of Chicago. Thank you all for being here with us today. So to start us off, I want to have a question that is going to be mostly posed to you, Sandy, and Alexa. As Commissioner Loizon mentioned, there was this big wake-up moment for a lot of us in conversations that we've had with some of you. And that moment came in discussing the impact that witnessing daily trauma can have on the mental health of people in general. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the impact that it has on police officers and how that impact might affect their interactions with community members.
That's a huge question that could last all night, I think. But I think it's very important for all of us to really go back to the whole concept of trauma. Trauma has no boundaries. It has no race boundaries, gender boundaries, ethnicity boundaries, or career boundaries. And so I think from my perspective, trauma, if we really understand how trauma impacts us as human beings, we start to build a compassion and empathy bridge between what we do in policing and what happens to all of you in the community. And there's so many different things that we really need to take into consideration. But one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight is how trauma impacts our police officers. And why is that important to you as a community? We cannot, in a healthy manner, police our communities without having healthy police officers. And so one of the things that I always throw out there, since we just had that beautiful sad discussion or talk from Erin, thank you for that. That had to just be heart-wrenching for you. It was for me just to listen. I think it's important for you to all understand statistics alone tell an interesting story about first responders, about police officers in general. And so when you think in terms of the officers that are serving our communities, our officers have a higher than the general population suicide rate.
Sandy, really quickly, do you mind just speaking up and
Yeah.
bringing in?
Sorry, thank you.
Much better, thanks.
Yeah, so the general population, 11 out of 100,000 people in the United States commit suicide. In the policing population, 15 out of 100,000 commit suicide. And I think a lot of the reasons, and Alexa, I'll turn it to you, a lot of the reasons that happens is because the sheer number of traumatic exposures we have. And so when you think about what our officers see every single day and what they're responding to, and they're trying to stabilize what's happening in our communities, those experiences don't just go away once we clear the call. They continue to follow us wherever we go. And if we don't know how to appropriately manage those types of trauma exposures, we ended up with what I call a trauma trailer. You know, most of us have a trauma backpack. We end up with a trauma trailer, and there's so much processing that has to go on. And if we don't recognize the need and the importance of that, then we stigmatize people, and people are afraid to come forward. So that's kind of, I'll just touch on that and I'll turn it to you, Alexa.
So before you go, just want to make a note for our panelists that I know we tend to feel like we're just speaking to the folks in the room, but there's about 80 people on Zoom and a few are texting saying that they can't hear us. So if you can bring
Okay, so we'll make sure we're right up on the mic.
Thank you.
Oh, here, I'll try this one. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here and to be with like such incredible leaders in this space and to hear from all of you. It was really helpful to be in this space for the last hour. And again, to Erin and your family, I hope you do feel like you have a community behind you. And your loss is, we do this work in honor of what you've been through. I do want to just say a few things that haven't yet, because I don't want to be redundant. When we talk about suicide, I want to make sure, I've heard a few people use the word sick, like sick people can't. I want to reframe this a little bit, because we are in a very serious mental health crisis. The worst I think we hopefully will ever see. And there's a few points to hold on to. One is mental illness suicide has less to do with mental illness and far more to do with hopelessness. And we are pathologizing trauma. What I mean by that is my trauma and Sandy Joe's trauma may be different. I may have more community, I may have more resilience, perhaps. And I'm going to experience it in a different way, and my behaviors may feel different because of it. So just because we have a traumatic event doesn't actually mean we can't, on the other side, have what we call post-traumatic wisdom. We actually can be better humans on the other side. We can have more empathy. We can create this bridge. We can understand each other and our own lived experiences. What we see chronically in communities with higher rates of suicidality, which are young people, middle-aged men, and first responders, including, by the way, nurses, which we're seeing a huge increase, is that they do not have a shared community to grieve with. That in fact, the communities in which impact their trauma hate them or turn their back on them, or that is how they experience it, and they feel invisible. So we heard earlier tonight that our police and our fire and let's not forget also our 911 call takers, this whole system here have become the social safety net. We have asked them to work outside of their experience and their capacity and their resources without mitigating that stress and treating them like a number. So when we talk about hopelessness, what's more hopeless than that experience? And that's where we're really seeing this increase, because the stigma about mental health is not the issue. Lee can speak to this. You can speak to this. Certainly Superintendent Snelling. The police aren't afraid to ask for help like they were maybe 10 years ago. The issue is, do people feel like things are getting better? And Sergeant, per your comments about the 11th district, if you saw that tile get fixed, maybe that would be a vote of things are getting better. Or many of you who spoke today about we just want to see something get better, and we're yelling it out to whoever will hear us. Those are very shared lived experiences. Okay, I'll stop. You guys give me a mic and here I go.
We really appreciate it. And I think you're right. These are such complex issues that we can talk about it at length. I have a question now for Alderman O'Shea. We know that you serve one of the largest populations of public servants of the city of Chicago, including officers and other first responders. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience has been advocating for these folks, and what are some of the issues or requests that folks bring to you on the daily when it comes to the issues that impact their job?
So I represent the 19th Ward, communities that include Beverly, Morgan Park, Mount Greenwood. I represent more first responders, both active and retired, than any other part of the city. And in many cases, those are the leaders in my community. Those are the folks that volunteer at school. They coach Little League. They serve on their local school council. And what I hear from police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and even 911 call takers is that what they endure each and every day on the job. We heard some stories earlier. They don't just turn that off like a light switch when they get off shift. If they have a family, they have to go home and try to be a loving, supportive partner, try to be a good mother, a good father. They take that pain, they take what they see each and every day on the job home with them. And there's a sense of hopelessness with many of them. You just take the last 44 months. Many of us in this room stayed home during the worst of the beginning of the pandemic. It was those very people that went to work. They were out there putting themselves on the line. They were out there each and every day serving and protecting us. We need to do more as a community. We need to do more as a city to support them. I often say this when we talk about crime and things in the neighborhood. If we don't partner with our first responders, if we don't support them, how can we expect them to support us? How can we expect them each and every day to be able to do their important work, serving and protecting us? What a difficult time to be a police officer in this country and in this city. Such a noble, honorable profession. You know, a line that I always use is police officers put their lives on the line each and every day for people they don't even know. And as elected officials, as community leaders, we need to do more to support them.
The next question is going to be for Superintendent Snelling, and I'm going to let Commissioner Gomez ask it. But before I do, Superintendent Snelling, could you just very quickly talk about the changes that you've made with respect to tiered deployment and canceling days off for police officers?
Well, tier deployment was canceled last month. When I took office, the first thing I did was get rid of tier deployment so that officers could get their days off. The other thing that we guaranteed that there are going to be times, because our police department is short officers, there are going to be times where we are going to have to cancel days off for large scale events, but we will give those officers an adequate amount of time and notice so that they can prepare. We know that officers have children, families, and when your day off is canceled and you've got plans, obviously that creates problems with your family. So that was one of the things that I said that I would do, and I just made that happen. So.
Yeah, and we're very encouraged by the progress that has brought forward. Sticking with you, but also looping in a little bit of Alderman O'Shea, people joke all the time that there's two seasons in Chicago, winter and construction season, but there's actually a little known third season called budget season. And we know that the budget is mostly made up of a lot of the salaries that the department has to pay for. But we also know that the budget can be impactful in determining what the priorities of the department are going to be moving forward. So Chief Snelling, thinking about the budget and thinking about some of the things that we've heard about today, like the difficulty that some of the officers have in operating in their work environments, can you tell me a little bit about what are some of the impediments that you foresee that we still have to overcome in order to deepen our understanding and our access to wellness for officers?
Well, there are several things. One, resources. We have to make sure that our officers have the proper resources to get their jobs done. As you heard, we have some facilities that are not up to standard. We are dealing right now with a migrant crisis where we have children sleeping on the floors of police districts. And we know that the mayor's office right now is working to try to rectify that problem. Obviously, there are a lot of barriers that we have to get through to make that happen. But someone mentioned before, these are human beings. And as these officers walk in and out of those districts every day, they see human beings living under some of the worst conditions. However, beyond the district, then they leave there and go out to jobs and see other people living in deplorable conditions. And when we see things like this has an effect on you. A lot of times we don't think about these things because we think about an officer going to work, doing the job, and then going home. So it's not all about just the trauma from the violent crimes that and the violent acts that officers witness on a daily basis. It's also about the vicarious trauma, just seeing the individuals and the people that you deal with on a daily basis and the suffering that officers witness. These are some things that they take home. So we have made some strides. There are 2 facilities that have been opened. As a matter of fact, I remember when Alderman O'Shea invited me out to the facility that was opening out on the south side, EAP facilities, where officers can go and get help. There's also one on the north side. We've been pushing for officers to try to break the fear of being judged because they seek out help. It's actually more courageous to seek out help than it is to hide from it. So we want to make sure that we push that. So these are just some of the issues that we see, but here's the biggest one, and I'll stop with this one. The biggest one is our relationship with our community members. The question was asked earlier, and I know the term sick was used. How does sick people help sick people? And it's not about being sick. It's not about a sick person helping another sick person. It's about shared experiences. I was last month at a walk for suicide. There were police officers amongst community members, and they all had the same shared experience. Without the uniform on, nobody knew that they were talking to police officers. All they knew is that they were talking to human beings who had similar experiences that they had. And the communication there was unbelievable. Police officers talking to community members talking to police officers with this shared experience, and that was all they were concerned about. It broke down those barriers. So how do we help each other? By having these conversations with each other. I can't walk in here and dismiss anything that anybody said at that podium today. If I did that, then I would be dismissing your experiences. So when someone walks in and just assumes that the police officer who's wearing a uniform is just a piece of garbage, which I've heard officers call before, you're dismissing the human being who's behind that uniform. So we have to make sure that we have these communications so that we can work together.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief Snelling. And to you, Alderman, can you tell us a little bit more about what are some of those impediments that still need to be surpassed, and what are the next steps that you would like the police department and the city of Chicago to take in order to make sure that wellness can reach every officer?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to recognize that the city of Chicago, the Chicago Police Department, has made great strides in this crisis, but there's still so much more work to be done. As the superintendent mentioned, we now have 2 facilities, one on the north side, one on the south side. We need to do more to support our officers as far as they deal with the trauma each and every shift, that we do more to support them if they might be battling alcoholism or might be turning to opioids of some type to whether it be an injury, pain they're suffering, or to mask the pain that they witness each and every shift. There needs to be more done on that. But I think the most important thing is as I look out of this audience, and I've heard some stories tonight, and there's been a lot of pain that some people have endured. We need to rebuild the trust in these communities, and that whether that's Rogers Park, Hegwish, or here in Inglewood, whether you be a police officer or a community resident in crisis, we need to work together. We need to partner together. We need to support one another. And Chicago has made significant investments to support our officers, but we still have a lot more work to be done. And I'm going to be leaning on some of the folks up here at this table for what that is. And then I want to be a voice to try to achieve that.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out that there's a lot to be done. That's what we're here to be part of, that change. So I want to close this off on a question before we jump into the comments or the questions from the community. And I would like for Sandy Jo and Alexa to sort of kick us off. In your opinion, with all the challenges that we had ahead of you, is the most effective thing that our city can, what is the most effective thing that our city can do to respond to all these needs? What can we do as a city, as community members, to make sure that we are addressing this issue?
I only get to pick one. Hello. Okay. So can I just point something out though, a point of clarification? Both Superintendent Snelling and Alderman O'Shea mentioned the two different locations. I want to explain what that means to folks who may not know what that means. There is what's now called Professional Counseling Division within the police department. They've been there for years. They were historically called the EAP, but they do more than an EAP does. They do long-term therapy. At one point, there were like 2 counselors. Now I think there's closer to 20, maybe more. It's been higher. It's hard to hire in the mental health profession. Anybody that's looking for work, we're all looking for mental health professionals. But the challenge was that their EAP was in an old drug house on the near the police academy. It was not like a cathartic place to seek therapy. There wasn't confidentiality. They were all on top of each other. You couldn't really have groups. You tried. Offices were thin walls, et cetera. And so officers, for example, that worked in 3 who were finishing their watch at 7 o'clock to drive here, or officers who worked in 16 to get there, it felt like it wasn't accessible. And it was traditionally 9 to 5. By opening 2 sites that are in communities in which many first responders live, we have voted that it matters to make this accessible. So to maintain that in the budget in terms of budget season is critically important, and to maintain that there's enough staff to both support officers and manage those staff is also critically important. There are many things in which are necessary in creating what we would call a culture of wellness, a philosophy of wellness, and you can't piecemeal this ever. There has to be 3 kind of buckets, and don't worry, I won't go into depth on all of them, but I want you guys to think about it in the thought of like a prevention, an intervention, and a postvention. Police do the intervention really well, right? That's their job. But the prevention is when you are a recruit starting to normalize the experience of mental health. Instead of a trainer at the academy saying you're more likely to have a substance use disorder and get divorced because of this job, maybe reframing that and saying you are here because of your strength, and that will be tested. So we want to tell you what resources you have so you don't become disconnected and you don't become addicted because of this job. The intervention is key. You know, we're talking about general orders earlier. The general order for somebody in community who's in a mental health crisis, the response is very different than what happens internally. That in of itself is a very an equity issue. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but the postvention, how do we sit with people? How do we reduce the tool that is the immediate impulsive behavior for people who are thinking perhaps about suicide? How do we maintain peer support? How do we make sure that your peer support reflects your lived experience and it's not just who's working on that watch? And then the last thing I'll say is not everybody wants to receive counseling through the professional counseling division, and that's okay. We have to make sure as a city that we honor our city employees, not just the police, but all of us, that they have adequate health insurance so they can actually access mental health services if they need to. And the current insurance for the police department is not acting in alignment with the federal law around mental health parity.
So I'm going to build a little bit on what Alexa just said, but one of the things when you're talking about access, that is, from my perspective in working with agencies across the country, you need actually 24/7 access, which is very, very hard to get 24/7. I mean, I've talked to officers as a peer support at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night after a horrible call where they just saw a child killed. So that is not the norm right now at all. And that means telehealth and budgeting that includes that type of access. 24/7 access is important, where they can literally on their cell phone call a number and talk to somebody in the moment. And I just wanted to build on that because I think that's a really important component. And then for my number 1 piece would be prevention. I think we do a very good job at the intervention level for the most part when we're aware of something that goes on. But what my research has been with large agencies mostly, and there is very little prevention. And even the prevention training they get in the academy is very minimal. Here's where everything is. When you're scared, getting yelled at to run up the hill fast, you're not even paying attention to where the resources are available. So what I have seen over the years that really makes this resonate with officers and where they can get it when they're in their darkest moment is when it's repeated, when it's continuous, when training is not a one and done, when it's more than just a training for prevention, where the policies are actually driving some of the things that are important. So one of the things about policies that I think is important, and what I've heard over and over again, is make more mandatory referrals based on exposure. Our child abuse unit is a prime example. Those detectives who do child abuse, they're saints. And some of them do it their entire careers. And just having something such as a debriefing, a monthly debriefing, where the team can get together, because as you said, Alexa, being part of a community is really, really important, knowing that you're not isolated in the feelings that you're experiencing. And I use the word trauma exposure versus sick, right? Because trauma exposure is exactly that. And I have seen so many officers come out of really horrible trauma exposures and what I call post-traumatic growth, where they actually can help others because of the way they've been able to process it. But you can't process it in isolation. And my community members out there that experience a significant trauma in their lives, when you're doing it in isolation, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. So thinking through that lens, just having access 24/7 is really important in setting up policies that require, so that I don't have to be thinking, should I go reach out to Alexa for help? They just say, no, you have to go here. It's all confidential, just go there. And those are the kinds of things that I think can really make a difference.
I'm going to interject with some of the questions and comments that we got from the audience. I'm going to share them with you, and then I think OG is going to ask a final question to get feedback from all of you. Before I do ask the questions that we got from the audience, I do want to point out in response to Erin's ask that the whole community get involved, that there is a wide cross section of people here in addition to all of the people who are online. And I do want to just give a little shout out to a couple people who have made it their business to be here tonight. Mike Meddy, who's here, who works very long and tirelessly to help officers through his role in the FOP. I also want to call out Dr. Andrew Dennis, who is a trauma and burn surgeon from Cook County Hospital. He made it his business to be here tonight because he wants to be a contributor to the officer wellness initiatives of this commission. And there are a bunch of district council members here who are listening to all this feedback, and we appreciate you hanging in here all tonight and hearing us out. I wanted to just put these comments out there because I think they will inform your answers to the next question. You may be able to touch on them. One of our audience members said that I believe building stronger relationships with the community can help the mental health on both sides. What input are you taking from the community to make sure that commanders are extending an olive branch consistently in their districts? The second question was, are CPD officers educated on trauma-informed care? And then the last comment we got was CPD currently has 9 to 13 mental health care professionals for about 1,200 plus officers. Is there a plan to hire more? And is there a plan to consider other alternatives like life coaches? Also, this person made a suggestion that it should be a requirement, at least monthly, for officers to check in because too many officers are really struggling. And I think that resonates with the point that you were making, Sandy Jo. Superintendent Snelling, I hate to cut you off because everybody wants to listen to you and not me. But before you get to the point I can see in your eyes you want to make, I'm going to let Oswaldo put out this last question and then we can do it all at once.
Sounds good.
So these are all questions that we hope you can answer in the minute that you have, Superintendent Chief, and I'm sure that that's
I'll
doable.
talk fast.
Yeah, but before we get to that, I want us to again center in one of the folks here that bravely gave us their perspective, and that's Erin. once again, Erin talked about hope and the necessity of hope in making sure that we solve this crisis that we have in our hands. On behalf of the city, as a leader in the city, and also to you as you're answering, Alderman O'Shea, what can we do to make sure that we answer this call to action to instill hope in those that are working for our department?
So first of all, I'll start by saying this. I think it starts, and it has started with this commission. The mere fact, and trust me, the commission holds you accountable. But what I will say is having the open mind to bring this forward for the public to hear and to have this conversation opens a dialogue that we wouldn't have had. So thank you for stepping up with that. And Erin, thank you for coming here and providing that story. I think it's helpful for everyone in the room to hear that. What I will tell you is this, moving forward, I want to provide the best, the most well-trained, and the most healthy officers that we can possibly provide to the communities. Because if we're not doing that, then we're failing. Here's the issue. I said something at a press conference once when I said that in order for our officers to love others, we first have to love them. And what I was talking about was myself and our leadership in this department. Now, when I said that, here's exactly what I meant. I grew up in this Inglewood community, and I've worked over here for years, and I've seen the trauma that the children in this neighborhood go through. And if we want those children to grow up and love others, we first have to love them. Why would that be any different for any other human being that's dealing with trauma on a regular basis? Our officers see violent acts every single day, and they see the victims of these violent crimes. And I'll tell you this, at one point, I thought that I had just become callous to the trauma that I've seen inflicted upon people, the dead bodies that I've seen, that I've picked up, that I've moved, the dead children, the abused children that I've seen, only to figure out that it was just repressed memories. There was just coming here today, I was driving down a block that I grew up on. And in the second grade, I remember a guy by the name of Leonard, who was a custodian of the building that I lived in. And I had this conversation with my detail. And I remember all he talked about was his pregnant wife, and he couldn't wait for her to have that baby. She had the baby. And he came home one day and the baby was in the oven. I would imagine that she was probably suffering from what we now call postpartum depression, but we're talking the 70s back then. And now here I am, almost 55 years old, and just driving down that block, having that memory and remembering the look on this man's face when he saw that, and the smell that I could smell from that. Our officers see that type of thing almost every day. How do you deal with that, and how do you decompress from that? So this kind of dialogue and this conversation is going to be helpful for our officers now to be able to share these empathetic conversations where we can talk to each other about what the issues are. So I think it's important that we have more conversations like this where we can have these shared experiences, where we are not dismissive of each other because of our professions. I've seen a 16-year-old girl with her bicep ripped off and an officer applying a tourniquet to save her life. I've seen a man with his eyes rolling in the back of his head while an officer stuffed pressure gauze into his carotid artery, and he was able to save this individual's life. But this is something that our officers take home on a daily basis. So more conversations like this is going to help us. Having panels like this, I think, is going to help us, and it's going to help us grow with the community, because that's the only way we're going to make this work.
Thank you for sharing that. Those are very difficult stories to hear, and I'm sure very difficult stories to share. Alderman Shea.
I just like to follow that up, but I think it starts with leadership And what everybody here who hasn't seen Superintendent Snelling before is witnessing tonight is real leadership. And that needs to go all the way across the board. As he begins to put his leadership team together, we need to make sure in each respective district, you have a commander, a captain, a lieutenant, sergeants, and such, all the way down, that are looking for the signs of officers in crisis, that are looking for the signs of someone that just needs someone to talk to. I live in the 22nd district. I witness that every day with my commander. He's a real leader, Commander Kinane. Do we need to make the investments? But we also may need to make sure that we're putting proper leaders in place. Another thing I think we need to look at is our FTO program, our field training officers. That's the first person that these young officers that they look, once they're out of the academy, that they look up to. Those are the people they learn when they arrive on a scene and what to do, what not to do. That's critical moving forward. You can never have enough quality field training officers. Just a couple things I wanted to mention.
I'm so glad you brought that point up. Thank you. Alexa, you're up to bat.
I honestly feel super hopeful. I guess, I've had the privilege of working as a mental health advocate my whole career, really, 19 years. And about 10 of those years I've spent working equally with community and law enforcement. And when Superintendent Snelling was Sergeant Snelling, and I would see him in the hallway walking in it when I was walking to the academy to teach de-escalation training, he always showed up. He always asked, he always invited in my feedback as the civilian mental health advocate. And we probably don't agree on everything, certainly, because our lived experience is different. But what I have seen with my entire crew at NAMI and the people who have been impacted both positively and negatively is that if we can just let down our guards and give each other a little grace, we actually can see a lot of progress. I've been invited in to help with this in ways that I never thought would be possible. And it is leadership. At the end of the day, we all just want to be seen and heard. And to have somebody sit here for 3 hours as a superintendent and listen and do all this work is really different than I've seen before. And frankly, also to have critical lovers in the audience who both can hold accountability and kindness and fairness makes me feel more hopeful about this. I think that to Superintendent Snelling's point about the suicide walk that they did, to be together in community is really important. And I know that it's important, and I want to validate and understand that law enforcement often want to see other law enforcement. They often want peer support over a clinician like me, perhaps. But we also have to stop spending so much time talking about where do law enforcement get help and talk about where are we all getting help. And will there be a world one day where we can all walk into the same mental health facility, civilian, police officer, community member, and receive services that we all need for our heart? Maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't, but let's name it and normalize it, that people are suffering, that the leadership is saying my responsibility is to hold the wellness of my police, not just make sure that they're safe, but also make sure that they're emotionally safe. I think that that's a huge step in the right direction.
Okay, so following that, I don't know how I do this, but one of the things that I think is really very, very important is that the dialogue continue. I am the weirdo who's always optimistic. I always turn hopelessness into hope. And I think that's where we need to be as a community. And I think it's very important that we look through the lens of trying to understand each other's perspectives and experiences. I have lost loved ones to suicide, but my experience is different than Erin's. Every experience is different. And for us to be able to hear each other starts to build those bridges of empathy and compassion. And I think that's where the power comes for how do you heal as a community. And when I say as a community, I'm talking about everybody, police and our community members we serve. I do want to answer the one question because I had helped the police department for a couple of years create their their training plans, and they do trauma-informed training. And it is part of their annual training. They touch on it in various pieces. But I think a little bit more of a focus on self-care will be beneficial, because I think we do a lot with the trauma that we have caused to the communities, and we have to own that. We've caused some of the trauma that the communities experience historically. We have to own that, but we also have to realize we can better serve the communities when we are better able to process our trauma. So my goal is that moving forward, that the training that the CPD does do right now continues to get enhanced. And I know it's going to, under the good leadership of Superintendent Snelling. I too have known him since he was a sergeant. But I think if we look at this as our problem and not somebody else's problem, I think that's where the healing is really going to take place. And that's how we are going to be able to better serve all of the individuals out there who 3 o'clock in the morning at their darkest moment call 911, and we have to show up. So that's how I will end.
Yeah, beautiful comments. Thank you so much. We're gonna give Commissioner Loizan another opportunity for comment.
I just wanted to say that if we're not already all in awe of Erin Ross, in addition to posing the question that we just gave to you, Erin actually wrote an email to me where she answered her own question about ways that she believed we could help police officers. We are really light on time, so we're not going to have an opportunity to share that, but I do want to let Erin know, and all of you know, that I will be sharing it with you and our fellow commissioners, because it's very rare where someone presents a problem and a solution at the same time. And finally, I just want to thank all of the commissioners for all of their work on this. They have really indulged me and jumped into this project with me. And it's something I'm very appreciative of.
Well, I hope we can all join me in thanking the amazing panelists that are here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to the city. I think we all have a lot to learn and a lot of conversations still to have. So thank you all for joining us. And then I'm going to pass it back to Commissioner Driver with the microphone.
So I'll echo Vice President Gomez's comments. Tonight was definitely a heavy moment for me, but I am hopeful. I'm hopeful. I'm thankful. I'm grateful that this is an issue that we can attack head on. It's not something that I believe anybody can run from. It's not going to get better by itself. And I'm appreciative of everybody who's been here today. I'm very thankful to see the representation that are here. And I truly believe that together we are powerful. And this is something that we can overcome and something that we can get better at and actually lead the way as a city. This is the point in the meeting where I'm supposed to run through our social media handles. So please, please follow us on our social media handles. Our next meeting is going to be December 11, 2023 at 6:30 at Truman College. And before we adjourn, I want to pass the microphone to Commissioner Brown, who's going to make an announcement.
This ties in well with what we've been talking about in terms of mental health. November is Transgender Awareness Month. This is an opportunity to celebrate, to honor, and to stand up for our transgender, non-binary, and our gender expansive friends, family members, coworkers, police officers, neighbors, as we work to raise awareness, to foster understanding, and to celebrate the trans community's incredible gifts and experiences. For all of you who are trans, we see you, we celebrate you, and we are working for your safety. We invite you to talk with any of us about any places where you feel unsafe. November 20th is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, and here in Chicago, we want to name the high numbers of Black trans women who have been murdered. We call on all of us as community and CPD to work hard to prevent their murders and also to solve their murders. CPD by investigating, and community members by standing up and speaking up if you've seen or heard anything. As the parent of a trans child who is an adult, I implore all of us to stop the harm to our trans communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. There being no further business before the commission, the meeting is now adjourned. Man, that was a